right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder ministerial servant, and my only real claim to fame, I was a kid raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses throughout the 1970s and 1980s. I think we're a unique generation. Tell me if you agree. As I often do here, I like to issue a warning of sorts. We do like to have some fun. There's sarcasm, humor. They are my own brand of observation and experience, and they are never, ever meant to offend. Please take that at face value. Just trying to have a little bit of fun, heal, and at times we get serious. How can you not? So welcome in. Please do stay wherever you may be on this subject of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm going to ask you to join me this week on a bit of a rambling walk through my brain, which is somewhat terrifying. And if you want to turn off now, I get it. Take the next off ramp. But I want to speak into the open air about a subject that even to this hour, find it difficult to talk about. And I get approached a lot by ex-Jehovah's Witnesses or those that are considering an exit on this particular subject. And I feel in so many ways that this could be a 10-episode subject, and I will probably revisit it from, I guess, many different angles moving into the future, because it's one of my favorite subjects, and it's a pet exploration, if you will, for this guy. And that subject is just how our thoughts, our thinking, our power to decide and make personal decisions is impacted as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And again, the warning is out there. I'm going to take a walk down a path without much of a plan here. It's just going to be my streaming consciousness, I guess. I'm going to just be speaking into open air about my own observations, ideas, and thoughts, pun intended, I guess, on this particular subject, because I feel like it is absolutely critical. And I think when you get down to it, on all the other subjects we might explore on this crazy show, it really comes down to how our thoughts and our power to make decisions is impacted by this quote-unquote organization. I'm pretty open about how fascinated I am with human behavior, personality, motives, the power of thought, and everything that surrounds it. It's really difficult to define, or maybe I just think so. So it's only natural that one of my favorite subjects is the concept of decision-making and free will. But I want to come at the free will piece of this concept from a little different angle. I've already said it's one of my favorite pet subjects because the entire Jehovah's Witness belief system hinges on the concept of free will and universal sovereignty. And look, see a past episode if you'd like to get my real down in the weeds opinions, thoughts, and observations on free will and universal sovereignty. It turns out I have some strong opinions on it and how ridiculous that teaching is. It might be one of my favorite episodes because it is a borderline hilarious subject to me. But back to free will and our right to make our own decisions and how our thinking, our very thoughts, are impacted. The ability to make your own decision in Jehovah's Witnesses is thwarted, for lack of a better term. There is such a thing as the thought police, as you will come to see, and it's always intrigued me. It's a basic human right to make your own decisions, to think your own thoughts, that heavily impacts everything that we do. It's our very essence, it's our personality, it's who we are as human beings. Jehovah's Witnesses are taught that our entire human experience got kicked off in a pretty garden somewhere in the Middle East. There was a cast of characters, as we might say. There was a guy, some animals. Jehovah decided no human should be alone. I have some questions for him on his shunning concept in modern times based on that. He pops out a rib. He makes a perfect woman. They are walking the earth in the nude, And while all of this is entertaining, no matter how much you believe it to be literal or not, it's not the part I really want to focus on. The creation story gets enough play on this show. Between that and Noah's Ark, I reference it a lot. But where I want to deep dive is on this whole concept that humans, including Jehovah's Witnesses, get their start on free thinking right there in the garden when man and woman were made. Now, as a kid, growing into an adult in the organization, I was constantly baffled that anyone thought we had the right to make our own decisions. You remember the talks, conscious and thinking ability and free will, all sorts of words and acronyms and phrases thrown at the concept of free thinking, your right to think and act as you want. And it wasn't there. Even more baffling to me was the taught concept that Jehovah encouraged us to make our own decisions, free will, or anything else. I certainly didn't see that in the organization that I grew up in. I would sit through countless meetings hearing about free will and decision making and making good decisions, and it left me frowning, even as a kid. Like, when do we get to exercise free will or make our own decisions as a Jehovah's Witness? Sure. Listen, I could get a pepperoni pizza and I could skip the veggies on top with very little impact on my life. But there were far too many influences on my thinking in every serious way, on my life decisions, on what I wanted to do with my life, on who I wanted to be with, on who my friends were, if I wanted to enhance my life with education. And in all of those important areas of life, I personally felt as a boy and then certainly as a man that I had zero control over my own thoughts, my own thinking, or my own power of decision. Let me address this early and not spend a lot of time on it. This is the sort of thing that can take several episodes to explore, as I mentioned, and I likely will because I love exploring it. But yes, I realize if I decide to jump off my roof, there's going to be repercussions. It's this thing called gravity. Got it. We aren't talking about laws of nature or going too deep into consequences. That's another wrinkle for another day and show. I want to focus here on the long, long history of being told you can make your own decisions as a Jehovah's Witness when in fact you cannot, at least not without devastating consequences. And I'm not talking about the natural kind of consequences. They're fabricated. It always seemed to me that a God of love and his organization should want people to worship and obey out of a generous heart because they wanted to. Motive, passion, desire. But look, and I don't think I'm alone in this, it wasn't my experience. Or maybe it's just the way I think. I'm guilty as charged. It's entirely possible. It could just be me. But I don't think so. And I didn't feel like it was limited to just my own experience or the modern day life of a Jehovah's Witness. When I started feeling this way, I started immediately in my own mind to go backwards, to understand this. I'm getting messaging that says I am in control of my own thoughts. I need to control my own thoughts. I need to control my decisions. And yet, I didn't see that I really had that power at all, not without unnatural circumstances and consequences. So I started to go backwards, all the way back to that garden story, where instead of eliminating the talking snake, I was told he would instead be bruised in the head and do some bruising of someone else's heel and stuff, all of it leaving me thinking, did Adam and Eve ever really? Did they ever really have the right to make their own decisions? Because what follows for anyone that claimed to love Jehovah seemed to prove that making your own decisions, leaning into your own personal power, going with your gut, intuition, thinking it through, or exercising your free will, well, how do I say this? It had to be on Jehovah's terms. And right down to this hour, he and his organization still takes people's right to think or make decisions away from them if you want to be a Jehovah's Witness. The simplest way to say it is that he tells you that you have the right to make your own decisions. He wants to help you make good ones, but they better be his decisions, and even worse, they must match the decisions made by 9 guys, complete strangers you'll likely never meet, in upstate New York. And I spotted this at a very young age and considered it many, many times, laying in my bed at night or taking a walk through the woods or sitting on a beach, from the time I was growing up all the way up to this very hour. But it's clear, maybe only to me, I guess, that I suppressed my thoughts and I continued forward. I eventually became a ministerial servant. I became an elder. I got in line, and my thoughts were his thoughts. And while you can come to a simple conclusion on all of this, I continue to be intrigued by it. And why so many of us and Jehovah's Witnesses today just miss it when it's happening to us. And that's what I want to explore. Decisions as a Jehovah's Witness are not your own. Your mind, in many ways, is not your own. I'll dive into things like conscious matters, a phrase all Jehovah's Witnesses will recognize as we go. But every decision, including, and this was huge in the 70s, not picking on the sisters, but this was huge, whether a woman can wear nylons or show her bare legs at the Kingdom Hall. She didn't get to make that decision. Didn't matter if it was 90 degrees or she didn't like nylons. That decision was simply not hers to make. Or in the very least, or should I say, you can make that decision, but there's going to be some unnatural consequences. It ain't gravity, folks. It comes from somewhere else. So decisions made outside the governing body's opinions and guidelines, there will be consequences. I liken this whole concept of decision-making, free will, conscience, and more almost to a plate of food. Okay, roll with me on this. I know it's very abstract. Welcome to my brain. On a plate of food, it all comes together, but they all taste different. And listen, exposing myself here, I'm one of those psychos that eats strategically. I'm okay with food touching. I'm not that guy. My food can touch. But I do tend to eat my food in a plate where there's variety in a specific order or in combinations and a whole bunch of other OCD stuff. So in my mind, I tackle this subject the same way, in pieces or separately, despite it all blending together. And come on, don't try to tell me that you don't eat a warm cinnamon roll strategically. No one eats the middle of the cinnamon roll first. No one eats that cinnamon roll center first. It's a strategy. So here we go. When it comes to each person's right to make decisions, I feel like it all goes off the rails immediately when you consider who made that claim and his own actions that seem to oppose it. I start with the creator guy himself, Jehovah, at least as taught to Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah gets very confusing quickly for me, and he did as a little boy as well. We're told that making decisions is our right, but to follow the examples, guidelines, and principles given to us by him and his son, Jesus Christ. But well, as I often do here, Jehovah's history, a history we need to learn according to him, and that he is very, very emphatic that we all know, features a God speaking out of both sides of his mouth. But first, some of the Watchtower Society's comments on our thoughts and decisions. And I might add a little bit of a side point coming up here. It all starts with the reminder that you're flawed, okay? When you go to make a decision, or you're thinking about something, or you're developing a strategy, just want to make sure that each and every one of us get the steady and nonstop reminder from his guys in New York that we are all flawed and that we should never trust ourselves. And by extension, we should never trust our decisions. We should live in a perpetual state of fear as to what we do next. Yeah, you heard that correctly. And it comes right from their book. From Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 5, we get this, quote, "Trust in Jehovah with all your heart and do not lean upon your own understanding." End quote. We're off to a strong start. No matter how you might interpret that often quoted Bible verse, the message is clear. You're prone to make mistakes in decision making. You're better off with listening and following Jehovah and all that he does. And also, by the way, as this verse states, Jehovah's going to do that for you. And as we shall see, the way we are told that he does that, helping us make decisions or just making them for us as we get in line, includes those 9 guys in upstate New York. And I hope I'm explaining this correctly. Again, I'm rambling down the sidewalk of my own mind. But first, an example of why this always confused me. Is now a good time to remind everyone that we are also told that we puny humans are made in Jehovah's image? You could find that claim at Genesis chapter 1, 26 through 31. And well, just that act of eating that fruit made our ability to think and make perfect decisions all null and void. Allegedly. Seems as though thinking and making decisions was always on very fragile ground, at least for me. Adam came up with names for the animals on his own, but his perfect decision-making skills and his ability to think on his own went out the window when his wife turned up naked with a piece of fruit. And actually, backing up, I kind of understand that from a guy's perspective. Beautiful woman shows up with fruit. Yeah. Our brains go off the rails. Let's just call it what it is. But this is where it all begins. We are imperfect and prone to make mistakes. And we get the reminder all the time. We're imperfect and prone to make mistakes in the way we think or in our decisions. Our minds are flawed. And he wanted to be sure that each of us knew that early in his magic book and from his magic book, the Bible. But how about that side point I mentioned that may only interest me? As you know, welcome to OCD, and it has to do with our minds and our thoughts. Here's that side point. As a kid, at a very critical time in developing my thoughts on all things decision making, I couldn't help but really be creeped out by another detail taught from birth that maybe only I sat and thought about way too often. That thought is this. According to what we are taught as Jehovah's Witnesses from the time we can read and think on our own a bit, we need to be reminded that we are constantly being watched. Constantly. And folks, that includes what's going on in our minds and our thoughts. Was I alone on this? Being transparent, it's this concept that Jehovah is always watching you. Oh, and by the way, so are billions of angels. You remember this got them into trouble with the ladies at one point, and a bunch of people drown because they do this. And Jesus. So like all of these people I can't see up in the sky are watching me at all times. And that includes inside my head. Was I the only person creeped out by this at times? It also led to what many of us have to unwind when we leave Jehovah's Witnesses. Some pretty heavy guilt, repression, shame, because again, apparently everybody in the heavens can see inside my head, and it's like a big screen TV. And well, those thoughts weren't always pure. Does he watch me sleep? Does he watch me poop? Does he watch me have sex? My thinking and decision making, are they on display? I mean, this is a whole new level of what a Jehovah's Witness is taught from the time they're very young. Jehovah is in my head too. And listen, I personally as a kid was creeped out. I was creeped out. I can't possibly be the only person who ever considered this because we hear it in public talks. We hear it at the Watchtower study. Jehovah's inside your head. The angels are watching you invisibly up there, the same guys who couldn't get enough of our human ladies. Jesus is watching us up there, oddly silent for centuries. But it doesn't matter. Everything going on in our life, including our head, is on full display. Would you like proof of this? Confirmation that everyone is in your head when you worship Jehovah? From the Watchtower of 1986, March 15th, pages 21 through 23, How Can We Be Fully Pleasing to Jehovah is the article title. We get this, quote, God's word tells us that there is not a creation that is not manifest to his sight, but all things are naked and openly exposed to the eyes of him with whom we have an accounting. From Hebrews 4:13. Neither humans nor demons can read your thoughts, but God can. That being so, we want our very thoughts to be pleasing to him. So we do well to ask ourselves, what do I like to think about when not required to apply my mind to the work at hand? What is the pole, as it were, to which the needle of my mind's compass naturally swings? End quote. Jehovah is inside your head. And as a kid who's trying to make decisions and trying to think straight, this could be a bit overwhelming. And boy, did it creep me out. It only got worse as an adult. My God, I don't think there's a person who might stumble in and listen to this show that thinks pure thoughts 100% of the time. And for those of us with wild imaginations, OCD, or any other combination of brain challenges, you could just imagine what kind of major motion picture was going on inside my head. Do we need to talk about puberty? Let's not. But Jehovah is inside your head. Thanks for the reminder that other people can't, or that demons can't. They can possess people, but they can't read my thoughts. Anyway, so many questions. But Jehovah can. But there's more. From the Watchtower of 2006, January 1st, page 31, Make meditation a pleasure. We get this, quote, Jehovah God is the supreme ruler of the universe and is busy working toward the fulfillment of his great purpose. Even so, he concerns himself with the silent thoughts of each individual worshiper. Does Jehovah really take note of all the good thoughts of his millions of worshipers, you may ask? He most certainly does. End quote. Whoa. I'd love to know if I was the only one that sat back and went, oh my God, he's inside my head. And inside my head is not always a great place. As I navigate my own emotions, feelings, how absolutely amazing that sister looks, how beautiful she is, the crush I have, the fact that I'd like to punch that guy right in the face and I dream about it. On and on it goes. Jehovah's there, just sitting inside your head watching the big screen TV of your thoughts. Creepy. And I want to say, remember this the next time you're sitting in a Kingdom Hall thinking the speaker is so boring you want to scream. Or again, that sister across the hall looks so hot today. Or who might be ahead at halftime of the football game you're not watching? Or how can angels with no body parts lust after human women? Or what was Jesus doing between 33 AD and 1914? Or keep this fact in mind. Jehovah's watching. He's in your head and sees what you're thinking about all the time. And look, I don't even want to go into him watching you all the time in private moments and beyond. Don't need to say it, right? But there it is. But people, please tell me I wasn't alone when I say I did a lot of my thinking at night, in bed. In fact, I still do this. But as a kid who was wrestling with the fact that Jehovah was inside my head and could see my thoughts and what decisions I could potentially make, there was literally no amount of anything that helped. My brain was in overdrive. as a kid, it was all about the cute sister with the big brown eyes, or sports, or if Armageddon would come before they rescued Han Solo from the carbonite, or what the hidden meanings were on the cover of Hotel California album. Yeah, my brain was in overdrive. And it was like I was sitting in a theater side by side with Jehovah passing the popcorn, as I'm told he's watching my thoughts. He's watching the movie of everything I'm thinking about. And while we laugh at some of this and this concept and what a witness is told, remember, all this does is create guilt, repression, shame, as you realize there's no secrets with Jehovah, and you're not really making any decisions. You're making decisions based on the reality that he's sitting next with you inside your head. So naturally, where can a Jehovah's Witness go to get some help as they develop thinking ability, or they want to control their thoughts and impulses, or they want to exercise free will and develop a good, clean conscience? Where do they go to get help? At this point, you know Jehovah can see your thoughts, especially at night, at least for me. Apparently, he had nothing better to do, by the way, like, I don't know, solving wars, eradicating disease, feeding kids that are dying of poverty as it raged on. And, Satan was partying once again at our place because he let him come here. He had to be, during all of that, checking out my thoughts. And between the ages of 13 to 18, they weren't exactly pure. I went to the only place I was told I could or should go to develop thinking ability, thoughts, free will, good conscience, and all the above. I was told I had to go to his organization. Are you interested in hearing what Jesus and his guys in upstate New York suggested? Hold on tight. This is some deep stuff for us overthinkers. From the Watchtower of 1992, July 15th, pages 8 through 13, Christ hated lawlessness. Do you? We get this, quote, "If we happen to lay awake at night, there may be an inclination to do some negative thinking, such as dwelling on grievances or indulging in sexual fantasies. Never allow room for such things, but get in the habit of engaging in beneficial thinking. For example, try to memorize scriptures, the 9 happinesses, and the 9 fruits of the Spirit. Can you name the 12 apostles? Do you know the 10 commandments? What are the 7 congregations addressed in Revelation? Memorizing kingdom songs also helps to keep your minds on things true, of serious concern, righteous, chaste, lovable, well spoken of, virtuous, and praiseworthy," end quote. When you're trying to develop thinking, whether you're laying in bed at night like I was thinking about things you ought not, or you're just trying to be a good person as Jehovah lives inside your head, this is what the suggestion is to develop cognitive skills in good thinking. Oh yes, I couldn't stop thinking about how incredible she looked in that skirt tonight. So I'm going to control those bad thoughts by launching into a list of the apostles. I'm trading off that absolutely adorable, cute sister for 12 guys I'm never going to know, living on in heaven, also watching me, apparently. And I'm going to try to remember their names to get out of my head how incredible her smile is. Here we go. Matthew, Mark, Peter, John. James and John wanted to murder everyone, sort of, kind of like the modern day government body. That's exactly where my brain goes. That's exactly where the thoughts go. I'm memorizing the apostles. Hey, remember that time James and John wanted to kill everybody? That kind of reminds me of the governing body today. Wait, this isn't working. My thoughts are bad. I'm bad. I'm a bad person. And so it begins. Okay, let's try the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not murder. Oh, I'd love to murder the school overseer for giving me a W on my talk tonight. Ah, crap, this isn't working. Back to the suggestion. How about the 7 congregations? I remember Thyatira. Wait a minute, they liked sex a lot. Oh, wait, I like sex a lot and think about it. Oh, no, Jehovah, don't look at my thoughts. How about singing a kingdom song? How about Song 125, Jehovah's on my side? Here's how it goes. I know that in this crucial hour my faith will yet be tested. Around me swarms the devil's crowd like bees that were molested. But I can never beat them off. What? Wait, what? This is what happens. Welcome to our brains. Welcome to our minds. And yet the counsel, the divine counsel from Jehovah, who, by the way, is in my head, reading my thoughts and how to combat it all, down to his 9 guys on this planet, is to try to memorize these things and think about other things. And folks, it just didn't happen. By the way, I could list the 12 apostles. I did know the 7 congregations. I'm not singing kingdom songs on the show anymore. But I got questions about bees being molested. We remember that classic, if you're old enough. But none of this stopped me or my thoughts from going off the rails. That sister across the hall is the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. But let's replace her with Matthew, Mark, James, and John. Absolute insanity. But this is how a Jehovah's Witness is told to do their thinking and thoughts with Jehovah watching on. So with maturity, a Jehovah's Witness has to make every effort to bring their thinking in line with Jehovah's thinking, or more accurately, the organization's thinking. It's only natural that Jesus, who created man, would have some deep insight and even better advice to give us. And so here's some of his advice. And more critical counsel, as mentioned, is found in the September 2013 Watchtower Study Edition, Make Personal Decisions Wisely, where we get this, quote, every day we have to make many decisions. How do you feel about making decisions? Some people are eager to decide everything for themselves. They think they have the right to make all their own decisions. Side point, don't we? And do not like the idea of anyone else deciding for them. No, side point, none of us do. Back to the quote, others are afraid of making important decisions. Pay close attention to the next part. Quote, some look for advice in books or from counselors and even spend a lot of money to get the help they think they need to make decisions. End quote. Excuse me. Does that sound familiar? Wait a minute. Some people turn to books and counselors and spend money for help on how to think and make decisions? Wait. Did I read that correctly? Does that sound familiar to anyone else but me? Like, I don't know, anyone who's ever been a Jehovah's Witness? And they don't even see it. They don't even see it. They're literally describing what a witness is supposed to do to develop thinking ability, to control thoughts, to make decisions. They're told to go to these guys, advice found in their books from counselors called the governing body, and spend a lot of money doing it. And if you do that, you'll make good decisions. But the article continues, quote, many of us realize that although there are some decisions we do not have the right to make, there are many personal decisions we can make in life. However, we probably know that not all the decisions we make are wise or beneficial. As servants of Jehovah, we can be happy that he has given us clear directions about many of the important matters in our life. We know that if we follow his directions, we can make decisions that will both please Jehovah and benefit us. And then there's this, quote, but the Bible does not provide directions for all problems or situations. End quote. In a paragraph, a witness is told, yeah, you can make decisions, but they must be my decisions, and you must follow what I want you to decide. And therefore, it's easy to see that a witness's mind is not their own. And it never is. But the real zinger is at the bottom of that paragraph where it says the Bible doesn't provide directions for all problems or situations. If you're looking for examples that support that final sentence in the paragraph, that the Bible doesn't provide direction, here are some examples. Little things in life that a person should be able to think through, make personal decisions on, and have the power of free will. You know, things like medical emergencies that include blood. Maybe something what two consenting adults or married people do in the bedroom in private. What a person watches and what they listen to. Whether you should go to college, get a higher education, learn new things. And how about a little thing called whether or not I want to shun someone or not? And many, many, many more situations that are not found in the Bible. Therefore, they're left up to a human being to decide on and think through on their own. But no, not if you're a Jehovah's Witness. No worries, the governing body can fill in the blanks in your head. But one more from the same article. So again, as the reader is taking this in, they can learn to make sound decisions. We get this quote, as Christians, we want to think, reason, and act in a sensible way. So we need to learn to control our thinking and feelings and imitate the way Jehovah thinks, feels, and acts. Though we are imperfect, Jehovah, our Heavenly Father, is perfect in every way. He has given us what we need to change the way we think and to learn to have a sound mind. End quote. Jehovah. He's who we should emulate. He's who we should look to for the ultimate in perfect thinking. Everything he does is perfection, and we need to think and act like Jehovah thinks and acts. Quick question. Which Jehovah? Am I to look to the Jehovah that gave the most evil creature in known history access to his kids' room, otherwise known as the earth, until further notice? He's still here, folks. Or how about the Jehovah who had 2 bears eat 42 kids for laughing at a bald guy? Oddly specific. Or the Jehovah who watched on as Lot violated his own daughters? Or how about the Jehovah who drowns babies who didn't even know who Noah was? Or is it the Jehovah that let the apostle Peter lie, but then go on to heaven and be a king, but he then killed Ananias and Sapphira for lying about a real estate deal? Or look, I'm trying to develop sound thinking ability and make good decisions. Can you give me a little more to go on when you say we should imitate, think, and feel like Jehovah does? Because if I do, I'm fearful I'm going to end up in some trouble. Jehovah's character and his thinking and his thought processes and decisions, of which we know about from his book and his guys in New York, are incredibly suspect. Do I even want to mention assault, murder, plagues, disease, drownings, sending the bad guy to be with kids, on and on? But skip all of that and walk with me, again, as a witness learning all this, and look closer at the fact that, again, a reminder, Jehovah is in your head. And he helps us shape our thinking by sending messaging through his guys on earth. No more will the sun stand still, or an angel appear, or a talking donkey. Jehovah decided to make known his thinking and how you and I should think and make decisions. He made all of that available to us by means of magazines, books, videos. And might I add, this is an odd strategy considering the amount of money it takes to communicate this way. He didn't spend any money on talking donkeys or prophets who just rambled through the countryside, but now he does. And might I mention that in developing our thinking by means of magazines, books, videos, conventions, and all that, it's not very effective. It's not very effective. But all of this is damning, because when you're talking just about thinking and my rambling walk through my crazy brain, it's obvious that Jehovah has consistently given our power of thought, our power to decide, of free will and decision making. He's consistently handed that right to other men. One of my favorite examples of Jehovah stripping thousands of people of their right to choose or make their own decisions is found in 2 Samuel 24 in the Holy Book. And I've mentioned this before, but it's where King David decided to count his soldiers against Jehovah's command. He told them not to count. David said, I want to count, making his own decision. And in a move I've never understood, Jehovah gives David the opportunity to decide how to discipline himself. What? He tells David, you made the wrong decision. I live in your head, David, and I'm going to give you the power of choice here on how you're disciplined. You can go 3 years of famine. You can go 3 months of fleeing before your enemies, or I can give you 3 days of plague. An interesting choice considering plague affects other people, not just David, who did the counting. David, in true high character fashion, makes the decision that he likes a good meal and isn't up to hiding from the bad guys. He chooses the third option, and Jehovah then punishes Israel with a plague that kills 70,000 people, from the tribe of Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south. 70,000 people are impacted by the thoughts in David's head. Why do I mention this? Because it is wrought with insanity. And if you're a witness sitting through a Watchtower study, or you're listening to this in the Bible reading, whatever the case may be, your brain is like, wait a minute, what? It's insane when it comes to how a person is taught to think and make decisions. I could go on for an hour on this, and probably should, but we'll spare you to focus on the one detail that is unbelievable. Did the 70,000 people that died from a plague get any say or any decision-making power in the matter? Did they get to decide on any of this? Did they even know that David had even counted his soldiers? No. They're just dead from a plague. Meanwhile, we are given one of many examples of how the God of free will hands other people's lives and power of thought and decision-making into the hands of other men. Trust me, I got headaches thinking about this entire story as a kid and adult. Why did I find it so odd? Aside from killing 70,000 innocent people who had done nothing to deserve any of this, even King David was stripped of his decision-making ability, and we aren't even sure why. But the governing body has commented on this over the years, and it gives us a rare peek into how they think. In one story wrought with everyone being stripped of their power of thought and decision, we're taught it's all okay. Jehovah gives it into the hands of other men, our lives, our free will. In the Watchtower of 1969, March 15th, pages 190 to 192, under a question from the readers, my favorite, we get this, quote, "But as noted, we simply do not know why David's census was a sin. Was that unjust? Were 70,000 innocent people dying for the king's error? The Bible plainly shows that we all are sinners deserving of death. It is only by God's undeserved kindness that we live." What a peek into how Jehovah feels about us. Back to the quote, "So those who died had no special right to life. Additionally, can any human today say for sure that those 70,000 were not guilty of some serious sin not mentioned in the historical record?" End quote. In what appears to me to be one of those carnival mirrors that you look in and it goes on into infinity, you see yourself billions of times nonstop. You know the carnival mirror. This whole story shows so many things wrong with how to make decisions, the power to decide, how it impacts others, why you're making a decision for me, why Jehovah thinks, I'm going to leave out a detail, we're going to wipe out 70,000 people and kill them, and the governing body comments and says, they were probably bad people anyway. They didn't have the right to live. They only lived because Jehovah let them. Move on. You see, there must have been something wrong with their thinking anyway, so they deserved it. So let's review. To be a sound thinker, Jehovah is inside your head, examining your thoughts and decisions. If you want to make good ones, take a look at a few of his, or so he tells us. He has made a few doozies throughout the years, I might add. But inevitably, like everything else, we are told that in order to have good thoughts and develop good thinking ability and to bring our thoughts in alignment with Jehovah and make sound decisions, we need the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. And look, that's nothing new. Innocent people are told how to think and have their right to think taken away by Jehovah's guys all the time in Jehovah's Witnesses. In fact, surrendering your thoughts and thinking are required to be a Jehovah's Witness. I want to give you a brain bender example that is not a news flash to anyone who's been a J-Dub or is currently on their way out. But without question, you are required to surrender your mind and your thinking to the organization. Let's look at an example. From the Watchtower of 2022, February, page 4, we get this, quote, "Today, Jehovah leads the earthly part of his organization by means of the faithful and discreet slave. We show that we trust in Jehovah's way of doing things by heeding the direction we receive from the organization and the elders." End quote. It continues. The Watchtower of 2013, November 15th, page 20, in one of my all-time favorite quotes ever in the Watchtower, we get this, quote, "All of us must be ready to obey any instructions we may receive, whether these appear sound from a strategic or human standpoint or not." End quote. In both of those references, we are being told, surrender your power to decide. Surrender your thoughts. Surrender your thinking. In order to please Jehovah, you must do as we tell you to do. But then, Jehovah, in his book that we are told is inspired by him, also says this. At Psalms 146:3, we are told, quote, "Do not put your trust in princes, nor in a son of man, who cannot bring salvation." End quote. I'm going to go very slow here, and I mean it respectfully. Because what they've done to our thinking and thoughts, if you've been a dub, is highly damaging, and it causes cognitive dissonance. So let me reread that again from the Bible. Psalms 146:3, it says this, "Do not put your trust in princes, nor in a son of man, who cannot bring salvation." End quote. But then, a Jehovah's Witness brain, after reading that scripture under inspiration from Jehovah, is exposed to this from the organization. The Watchtower of 2009, February 15th, page 27, says this, quote, "Since Jehovah God and Jesus Christ completely trust the faithful and discreet slave, should we not do the same?" End quote. If you're wondering what happens to the minds and the cognitive abilities of any Jehovah's Witness, there it is. A brain salad that includes the counsel to never trust any man with anything, much less your thoughts or decision power, the power to decide, because they can't save you, And then the counsel from them that says we must trust these men in New York implicitly with our thoughts and power of decision. If it makes no sense at all, and why would it? They've had the possession of our thinking ability since day one. It shouldn't shock you. They claim that Jehovah and Jesus trust them. The same Jehovah and Jesus that said to never, ever trust them. There are many words for this sort of thing. And hopefully I'm explaining this appropriately because it continues to baffle me. But again, there are many sorts of words for this thing. They include words like brainwashing, propaganda, thought control, thought police, and a tiny word spelled with 4 letters, CULT. But for any surviving Jehovah's Witness, nothing about this is very shocking until it hits their cognitive skills. Not only does every piece of literature, meeting, convention, or anything else feature this not so subtle message to trust the guys in New York, the guys Jehovah said not to trust, but Jehovah, the Bible, has a long history himself of requiring people to turn their thinking ability, their power to decide, and everything else over to other men. Do you see the confusion it creates in a brain? It's not like it's new, and even then, it's a hodgepodge of good and bad. But the messaging is so mixed. The messaging is not consistent. The actions follow the inconsistent messaging. Jehovah's reading our thoughts, and aside from praying that bad thinking away, pray more, you can go to his organization, specifically the governing body, to get counsel on how or what to think about. But look, not every Jehovah's Witness has access to the wisest 9 guys on earth. So for most of us, by extension, who are struggling with our thinking or having bad thoughts or trying to make a really tough decision, we go to the next best thing, the elders. This is the most common advice for anything or everything. Just go to the elders. Approach an elder. As a kid, I had no idea just how much they all had lived inside my head up to that point and impacted the way I thought until I got older, and not even entirely then until I had left the organization. But the advice to go to the elders is burned into the brain of a Jehovah's Witness. It's as if a Jehovah's Witness sees them as these wise sages that can answer any and all questions, teaching each of us how or what to think about, and more importantly, how to make good, sound decisions. The elders, despite just reading, Jehovah says, never trust men, trust men, never trust men, trust men, never trust men. I've given lots of men the power over your lives. Never trust, on and on. Your brain is in a spin cycle. But again, back to the elders. They're supposed to be the guys at the congregation level who teach a witness how to think and what to think and how to make good decisions. But let me just say it now. They are not. I've said it a million times on this show, and I'll say it again. Most don't even study. Most elders have never read the Bible. And most of these guys are appointed to eldership not by some magic Holy Spirit, but by means of popularity, whether or not they give a good talk or meeting part. And don't forget their monthly service average. It's 10 hours or more. Ding, ding, ding. We have an elder, a guy that is going to teach you how to think and what to think and how to make decisions. And it doesn't stop the organization from encouraging every witness to approach them for help on every major thing in life, some of it life and death. In the Watchtower of 1996, September 1st, pages 19 through 24, Living by the Law of the Christ, we get this about elders, quote, for example, a Christian may wish to consult with an elder about an important matter that is not covered by some direct scriptural reference, or that calls for balancing different Christian principles. Nice save there. Perhaps he has been offered a promotion at work that has a larger salary but greater responsibility. Or the unbelieving father of a young Christian may be making demands on his son that could affect his ministry. In such situations, the elder refrains from giving a personal opinion. I'm calling BS right now. Back to the quote, and pay special attention to this quote in the paragraph. Rather, he will likely open the Bible and help the individual to reason on the relevant principles. He may use the Watchtower Publications Index, if available, to locate what the faithful and discreet slave has said on the subject in the pages of the Watchtower and other publications. What if the Christian thereafter makes a decision that does not seem wise to the elder? If the decision does not directly transgress Bible principles or laws, the Christian will find that the elder recognizes the individual's right to make such a decision, knowing that each one will carry his own load. End quote. Watchtower, 1996, September 1st, pages 19 through 24, in what I think is a classic, walking in circles by the guys that we're supposed to lean on. It's an incredible reference. First, referring to the whole counsel to go to the elders. In any congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, it's the answer for anything. But what a paragraph! It's comically bad. If you remember to reestablish, the person came to the elder because they were having trouble deciding on something that wasn't found in the Bible. Therefore, that's why they went to the elder. So in true gaslighting form, a writer, we are told, works with Jesus and the Holy Spirit on this article, gave the following counsel, and I'm going to go slow because this is incredible. And it is an exposure of how a Jehovah's Witness's thinking and power to decide and ability to reason is so deeply damaged by this organization. So let's unpack the paragraph. Going back, the elder is said to start with the Bible, of which we just already established doesn't comment on the matter, which is exactly why he approached the elder. Ding, 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 the Bible's silent. Use your head. The elder immediately points them to equally inept basket cases known as the faithful slave, who, despite this matter that he's approaching on not being found in the Bible or commented on by Jehovah, go on to include their thoughts in the Watchtower Index and in Watchtower articles and publications. Again, not the Bible's thoughts, their thoughts. It goes on to say the elder is not to give his opinion. Apparently only the opinions of Stephen Lett and Sam Hurd are good ones. And by the way, I might add, see their opinions on women and children if you'd like examples. Then the paragraph says, if the decision this person makes doesn't directly transgress Bible principles or laws, how could it? We already established it isn't in the Bible. The elder recognizes the right to make a personal decision. Folks, did we not just establish that they came to the elder because the Bible is silent on the matter? So why would an elder have any right to even consider it if it didn't violate a Bible principle or law? It's silent on the matter. That is the only reason I'm talking to this elder. But here is the kicker. You seek all this wisdom, you then make a personal decision on the matter, a matter not found in the Bible and the elder has no right to speak of, and if they don't like your decision, they then discipline you. They then can discipline you. So again, is the thinking or the power to decide amongst Jehovah's Witnesses ever really your own? And there it is in one paragraph under our noses, walking a human brain in circles, saying no one should give an opinion. It's not in the Bible, but if you want guidance, go look at the faithful slaves' opinions. They're just guys too, but they have a big library on their opinions. For anyone wondering why Jehovah's Witnesses are oftentimes a complete cognitive mess, mentally and emotionally, when they leave this organization, there it is. A lifetime of this type of mental conditioning, often for many of us spanning decades. You're never really taught to think on your own. Jehovah's inside your head watching, making you feel terrible about your thoughts. If you've got a really tough situation and you'd like some guidance and the Bible's silent on it, you're not taught to think on your own. Go talk to an elder who then tells you to talk to 9 guys in upstate New York and look at their library, who has no right to decide this because there's no basis for it. But if he doesn't like it, we can shun you. They systematically destroy a person's ability to think or reason or make decisions. And I'm officially exhausted. It's very apparent that in order to be a Jehovah's Witness, you must surrender your mind. Once you do, you're inundated with the messaging that says, oh no, we want to teach you how to think. We want to teach you how to think like Jehovah so you can make your own decisions. Here's an example of them saying that. The Watchtower Study Edition, April 2011, Make Decisions That Honor God, gives you this, quote, Jesus told his followers to teach others. One of the most important lessons we can teach Bible students is how to make good decisions. To do so effectively, we must resist the urge to tell them how to act. It is much better for us to teach them to reason on Bible principles so that they can decide for themselves how to act. After all, each of us will render an account for himself to God. All of us, therefore, have compelling reason for making decisions that honor God. End quote. Anyone who's a Jehovah's Witness knows that they probably were half asleep when this paragraph was read in 2011, and they also know it's bullshit. They don't teach you how to act. They control you. If the Bible was the barometer for how a Jehovah's Witness should act, we would have a whole ton of other problems to discuss, considering a great deal of the Bible is filled with violence, assault of women, slavery, beatings, death, mayhem, you name it. But we're told that a Jehovah's Witness in the Bible study arrangement and by congregation meetings is being taught how to think. They're not. They're being controlled. It's lip service. None of this could be further from the truth. Imagine making the claim, as I just read to you, that they must resist the urge to tell them how to act. Imagine claiming that they don't do that. Folks, that's the entire purpose of their literature and their meetings, is telling a Jehovah's Witness how to act, how to think, how to make decisions that are aligned with what they think they should be doing. The only thing you're being trained to do as a Jehovah's Witness is to think like the guys in upstate New York. The easiest way to observe this is just go to a meeting, which I don't recommend unless you're really secure and out of this thing. The formula is this, and to me, this is the most basic way they do this. You'll relate. Go to a meeting. Let's take the Watchtower study. Read a paragraph. Ask a leading question about said paragraph. Person raises hand, called on. They parrot everything they said or read in the paragraph back to the conductor and for everyone else to hear. This goes on, 3 to 4 times a week, for years, decades, and for some rare those, overlapping generation people. I'm sorry. This goes on for years and years and years until your cognitive skills have eroded and your thinking ability is oatmeal. It's mush. And here's an example. Try to imagine a world where complete strangers you will likely never meet convince you that you should be carrying a signed card, a medical directive in your wallet or purse that claims you're giving up the right to live if the only way to save you is to give you a blood transfusion. If you want to test how much Jehovah's Witnesses have surrendered their minds, their power of thought to decide, look at the blood doctrine. I guarantee you that if you walk up to a Jehovah's Witness today and ask them to explain the blood doctrine or the options involved, they will be flustered. The vast majority have given up the right to decide what happens to their own bodies. And trust me, they can't even explain it. I've seen elders on the hospital liaison committee unable to explain the blood doctrine. What procedures are allowed, or what fractions of blood they're able to take with their life on the line. Is it the proteins? Is it the white cell, the blood cell? They don't even know. And yet, they have a card in their wallet that openly states they've surrendered their decisions, their power, their thoughts, and their very life for something they can't explain. I laugh about a lot of this stuff about thinking, thoughts, and power of decision, but let's call it what it is. It's deadly, deadly dangerous. A Jehovah's Witness is simply repeating what they've had pounded into their heads or they've been listening to since they were kids. And in this example, with the blood card, they sign that card without a second thought. At that meeting, they get a witness. They run around all excited to get someone to witness them signing the card and getting a medical directive, and they slip it into their wallets. A card that tells anyone that finds it to let them die if they need blood. Folks, it's incredible. It's incredible. You're going to tell me a baptized 13-year-old understands that? But that baptized 13-year-old has surrendered their brain to an organization. And they slide that card into their wallet and they see mom and dad smiling with pride. Grown adults do it too. I did it. It's the first thing I did when I left. I tore up that damn card. So while Jehovah's watching our thoughts, Jehovah consistently hands our personal ability and power to make decisions to other men. And he encourages us to go talk to the elders, to learn how to think, to read the literature of the faithful slave. What's new? He's been giving people's power to decide over to other men throughout all of Bible history. See the census set. And before you realize it, you personally have surrendered your right to make decisions, your very thoughts, your very mind, to 9 guys in upstate New York. In an article I hope to cover at some point in the future, expanding on this whole thinking thing, it's my pet subject, comes to us from the Awake of 1978, August 22nd, pages 3 through 4. Do others do your thinking? ? God, the irony. Quote, Proverbs 14:15 states, a simple man believes every word he hears. A clever man understands the need for proof. Many today are like sponges. They soak up whatever they are submerged in. It is the easy way. Exercise for the muscles is hard work. Exercising the mind is even harder. It's so much easier to soak up whatever is around. End quote. People, they know what they're doing. They know they're stealing people's minds. It's right there. Awake of 1978. People are like sponges. They just soak up whatever they are exposed to. 3 to 4 times a week. Preaching, conventions, videos, family study night. Soak it up. They know what they're doing. It goes on to say this, quote, propagandists have little respect for people's thinking abilities. Hitler wrote, the intelligence of the masses is small. Their forgetfulness is great. They must be told the same thing 1,000 times. Lenin was more discriminating. He used historical and scientific arguments to persuade the educated minority, but slogans and half-truths to arouse the masses, whom he considered unable to grasp complicated ideas. The pen may be mightier than the sword, but oftentimes it is used to prepare the way before the sword. End quote. Lenin fooled them with slogans and half-truths. Sounds a lot like the truth, paradise earth, anointed, the last days, the organization, the faithful and discreet slave, advertise, 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 the king and his kingdom. And Lenin endorsed using the pen or writing to do a lot of his brainwashing. But let's not move on from everybody's favorite bad guy, Adolf Hitler, quoted in the Awake of 78. Hitler says, tell them the same thing 1,000 times, over and over and over again. Sounds a lot like repetition for emphasis, doesn't it? It sounds a lot like any and all meetings at the Kingdom Halls of Jehovah's Witnesses. The governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses knows what they're doing. And arguably, they had a pretty good example in the pages of the Bible from Jehovah, who encourages people to turn their power of thought over to him and other men. So I ask anyone who's interested in this subject as much as I am or is still a Jehovah's Witnesses, are your thoughts your own? Are your thoughts your own? Think about it. Just think about it. Thanks for joining me this week. Anybody who stuck around for this rambler is my kind of person. I appreciate all of you. Wherever you may be well.